My wife texted me from her so-called girls' trip and said, "Nathan, I'm leaving you for someone else. I've already taken our savings and moved out." After 14 years of marriage, that was how it ended. My name's Nathan Harper, 48, years old, a sales manager at a tech firm in Chicago. I'd spent over a decade building a life with my wife, Claire, supporting her dreams and saving every penny for our future. But that Thursday night, while I was working late, she drained our joint account of $150,000 and left me for her personal trainer. I read her message, stared at the screenshot of the transfer, and replied with 2 words, "I see." She thought she'd won. She didn't know I'd been preparing for this moment for months. I met Claire in 2010 at a friend's wedding in Evanston. I was 34, climbing the ranks at my company, and she was 30, a yoga instructor with a smile that lit up the room. We hit it off instantly. She loved my stability, my drive, and I loved her energy, her passion for fitness. We married a year later, bought a condo in Lincoln Park, and started saving for the family we dreamed of. I added her to the deed, opened a joint account, and poured my bonuses into our savings. $150,000 over the years, a nest egg for our future kids, or a dream vacation. I thought we were a team. Claire changed about 2 years ago. She started spending more time at the gym, not just teaching, but training with a new personal coach, Brandon Tate. She'd come home late, showered, in new workout gear I'd never seen, talking about how Brandon was helping her push her limits. I noticed the distance. She stopped asking about my day, started locking her phone, and took weekend trips with friends I'd never met. "I'm just finding myself, Nathan," she'd say when I asked. I didn't confront her. That's not my style, but I'm a sales manager. I read people for a living, and I knew something was coming. 6 months ago, I took precautions. I opened a separate account at a different bank, diverting half my bonuses there. Not enough for Claire to notice, but enough to give me a safety net. I moved important documents to a safe deposit box, my parents' wedding rings, the deed to our condo in my name, my sales contracts. I also hired a private investigator, Tom Ellis, an old college buddy who'd gone into security. "Keep an eye on her," I told him. "I need to know what's really going on." Tom started tailing her discreetly, sending me updates about her late-night gym sessions and coffee dates with Brandon. The signs were clear, but I held off. My dad always taught me to wait for the right moment, to gather all the facts before acting. So I watched, and I prepared. Claire's trips became more frequent. She'd leave for days, claiming it was a yoga retreat or a girls' weekend in Miami. I'd find receipts for dinners I never ate, clothes I never saw her wear, and once a gym membership card with Brandon's name on it as her emergency contact. I kept every piece of evidence, storing them in a locked drawer in my home office. 3 months ago, Tom sent me photos. Claire and Brandon at a rooftop bar in the Loop, laughing, her hand on his arm. Another photo showed them walking into a hotel, together, her overnight bag slung over his shoulder. I sat at my desk, staring at the images, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Clarity. I called my lawyer, Sarah Klein, that same night. "I think Claire's planning to leave," I told her, "and I think she's after our savings." Sarah was calm. "We'll protect you, Nathan. Let's set up a plan." Sarah helped me move more assets. I transferred the bulk of my personal investments into a trust Claire couldn't touch, and I secured the condo title in my name alone, using a legal loophole from when we bought it. I kept $10,000 in the joint account as bait, enough to make Claire think she'd gotten everything. I also gave Tom the green light to dig deeper into Brandon. "Find out who he really is," I said. "I need leverage." Tom nodded. "I'll get you what you need." The night Claire sent that text, I was in my office closing a deal with a client in Seattle. My phone buzzed, and I saw her name. "I'm done, Nathan," her message read. "I've met someone better. I took our savings and moved your stuff to a storage unit. Don't contact me." A screenshot showed the transfer. $150,000 gone. I leaned back, feeling strangely calm. I typed, "I see," and hit send. Then I called Tom. "It's happening," I said. She took the bait. He replied, "I've got what you asked for. Brandon's not who she thinks he is." I drove home to our condo, now half empty. Claire had taken her clothes, her yoga gear, even the couch we'd picked out together. My things were gone, presumably in the storage unit she'd mentioned. I sat at the kitchen table, looking at the space where our wedding photo used to hang. 14 years, reduced to a text message. But I wasn't broken. I was focused. Claire thought she'd left me with nothing. She didn't know I'd been building a safety net for months. The next morning, I called Sarah. "Claire transferred the money," I told her. "Let's move." She replied, "I'll file for divorce today and freeze the account. We'll flag the transfer as fraud." I nodded. "Do it." Then I opened my laptop and reviewed Tom's report on Brandon. What I found made my blood run cold. Brandon Tate wasn't just a trainer. He had a history, 3 prior relationships, all with women he'd convinced to leave their husbands. Each time he'd taken their money and disappeared. Claire was his latest mark. I poured a coffee and sat back thinking. Claire thought she'd played me. Brandon thought he'd scored big, but I had evidence, a plan, and the upper hand. I wasn't. Just a sales manager. I was a man who knew how to close a deal, and this deal was about to cost them everything they thought they'd won. Friday morning, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at Tom's report on Brandon Tate. He wasn't just a personal trainer with a charming smile. He was a con artist with a trail of broken relationships and stolen money stretching back a decade. 3 women before Claire, all married, all convinced to leave their husbands for him. Each time he'd drained their accounts, then disappeared. One woman in Milwaukee lost her house. Another in St. Louis filed for bankruptcy. The third in Cleveland had pressed charges, but Brandon skipped town before the trial. Now he was in Chicago, and Claire was his latest target. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger at Claire for falling for this guy, relief that I had the upper hand. I called Sarah, my lawyer, to check on the account freeze. "It's done," she said. "The bank flagged the $150,000 transfer as fraud. The funds are locked, and Claire can't touch them until the investigation's complete." I nodded. "Good. What's next?" "I've filed for divorce," Sarah replied. "We'll serve her papers today, and I'm requesting full ownership of the condo since it's in your name. We'll also file a civil suit for the theft of joint assets." I leaned back. "Let's do it." Sarah paused. "Nathan, this could get messy. She might fight back." I smiled. "I'm counting on it." By noon, Claire called. I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, what did you do?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "The bank froze my account, and I can't access the money. Call me back now." I didn't. Instead, I drove to the storage unit she'd mentioned in her text. Using the code she provided, I found my belongings. Clothes, books, a few photos. But my dad's watch, a family heirloom, was missing. So were our wedding albums. She'd taken the things that mattered most, probably to hurt me. That's when something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was personal. I called Tom. "She's panicking," I told him. "What else do you have on Brandon?" Tom replied. I tracked his financials. He's deep in debt. 2 maxed-out credit cards, a car loan he can't pay, and a gym lease he's 3 months behind on. Claire's money was his lifeline. I nodded. "Keep digging. I need everything." Tom agreed. "I'll have more by tonight." I hung up and drove to the bank, meeting with the fraud investigator, a woman named Karen Wells. She reviewed the transfer records. "Your wife moved the funds in 3 transactions over 2 days," she said. "The last one was right before her text to you." I showed her my trust account statements, proving I'd protected most of my assets. "This looks like premeditated theft," Karen said. "We'll cooperate fully with your lawyer." That afternoon, Claire showed up at my office. I was in a meeting, but my assistant, Jenna, buzzed me. Your wife's here, she said. She's upset. I sighed and walked to the lobby. Claire stood there, her yoga clothes pristine, her eyes red from crying. Nathan, we need to talk, she said, loud enough for my colleagues to hear. This is a misunderstanding. The bank froze our money? I looked at her, my voice steady. It's not our money anymore, Claire. You stole it. Her face paled. It was a joint account. I had every right. I stepped closer. You transferred it without my consent while planning to leave me for another man. That's theft. She crossed her arms. You can't do this to me. I've already paid for a new place with Brandon. I almost laughed. Brandon Tate? The guy who's been scamming women for years? Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed her Tom's report. 3 women, 3 scams. He's in debt, Claire. You're just his latest mark. She shook her head. You're lying. Brandon loves me. He's building a future for us. I shrugged. Believe what you want, but the bank, the courts, they'll see the truth. I turned and walked back to my office, leaving her standing there, stunned. Back at my desk, I reviewed the divorce papers Sarah had drafted, full ownership of the condo, no alimony, and a claim for the stolen funds. I signed them without hesitation. Then I checked my separate account. $80,000, safe and untouched. Claire thought she'd taken everything, but I'd been smarter. I'd also kept records of her spending over the past year. $5,000 on new clothes, $3,000 on trips, all from our joint account. Evidence of financial infidelity, as Sarah called it. I forwarded it to her for the civil suit. That evening, Tom sent me more. Brandon had a history of petty theft, and there was an open warrant for him in Ohio for skipping bail on the Cleveland case. I also found a lease agreement, he said. He and Claire signed for a new apartment in Wicker Park 2 weeks ago, using your joint account as collateral. I clenched my jaw. She'd planned this for weeks, maybe months. I called Sarah again. They used our account for the lease, I told her. Can we void it? Sarah replied, yes. Since the funds are frozen, the lease is invalid. They'll be evicted once we notify the landlord. I spent the night in my half-empty condo planning my next move. I knew Claire would fight dirty. She'd try. To paint me as the bad guy, maybe even claim I'd been hiding money to cheat her. But I had evidence, receipts, bank statements, Tom's photos, the lease agreement. I also had something else, a security camera I'd installed in our living room last year after a break-in scare. It uploaded to a cloud server Claire didn't know about. I logged in and found footage from 2 weeks ago. Claire and Brandon sitting on our couch laughing. We'll be set once I get the money, she said. He doesn't suspect a thing. Brandon grinned. You're a genius, babe. I saved the video. It was all I needed. Saturday morning, Claire texted again. Nathan, let's settle this like adults. Meet me at the coffee shop on Michigan Avenue. I can explain everything. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to Sarah's office. She had the divorce, papers ready to serve, along with a court order to seize any assets Claire had bought with the stolen funds. I also gave her the security footage. This is gold, Nathan, she said, watching the video. It proves intent. We'll use it in the civil suit. I nodded. What about Brandon? Sarah smiled. With the warrant in Ohio, we can tip off the police. He won't be a problem for long. I left her office feeling focused. Claire thought she could manipulate me one last time with her coffee shop meeting, but I wasn't going to play her game. I had evidence, a plan, and the law on my side. She'd taken my savings, my trust, my life as I knew it. Now she'd learn what happens when you underestimate a man who's spent his career closing deals. I drove home, ready to watch her world unravel piece by piece. Sunday morning, I drove to the coffee shop on Michigan Avenue, not to meet Claire, but to watch from a distance. I parked across the street, sipping a black coffee as she arrived, looking nervous in her designer workout gear. She kept checking. Her phone probably waiting for me to show up and hear her excuses. I didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I texted Sarah, "Serve the papers now." She replied, "Done." A process server approached Claire, handing her the divorce papers right there in the cafe. Her face crumpled as she read them, and I felt a flicker of something, Not pity, but closure. This was the beginning of the end for her plan. By noon, Sarah called. "The landlord in Wicker Park has been notified," she said. "The lease is void since the funds were frozen. They'll be evicted within the week." I nodded. "What about Brandon?" "I tipped off the Chicago PD about his Ohio warrant," Sarah replied. "They're picking him up today." I thanked her and hung up, feeling the pieces fall into place. Claire thought she'd start a new life with my money. Brandon thought he'd found his latest mark. They were both about to learn how wrong they were. That afternoon, Tom sent me a message. "Brandon's been arrested. Caught him at the gym. He's being extradited to Ohio tomorrow." I drove to the police station, not to gloat, but to give a statement. The officer, a gruff man named Detective Lopez, reviewed Tom's report. "This guy's a piece of work," he said, flipping through the file. "3 women before your wife, all scammed. We found bank records linking him to Claire's transfer. He's facing new charges here, too. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy." I nodded. "What about Claire?" Lopez shrugged. "Depends on what she knew. If she was in on it, she'll face charges. If not, she's still in trouble for the theft." I left the station and checked my phone. Claire had called 12 times, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleading to furious. "Nathan, we can work this out," she said in the first. "You can't do this to me," in the last. I deleted them all. Then I drove to the bank where Karen Wells had an update. "The $150,000 is being returned to a new joint account in your name only," she said. "We've also seized assets Claire bought with the funds, a car, some jewelry, all in evidence now." I thanked her. The money was back, but I still wanted my dad's watch and our wedding albums. Monday morning, I went to the new apartment in Wicker Park. The eviction notice was already on the door, and movers were hauling out furniture. Claire stood on the sidewalk, arguing with the landlord. I approached, my voice calm. "Where's my dad's watch? Claire?" She turned, her eyes wide. "Nathan, I don't have it. I sold it to pay for this place." My jaw tightened. That watch was a family heirloom, worth more to me than money. I stepped closer. "And the wedding albums?" She looked away. I burned them. I took a deep breath, letting the anger pass. "You'll regret that," I said quietly, then walked away. That evening, Sarah called with news. "Claire's been served with the civil suit," she said. "We're claiming damages for the theft, plus emotional distress for the destruction of your property. She's hired a lawyer, but with the security footage and bank records, her case is weak." I nodded. "Good. Keep me posted." I hung up and sat on my balcony, overlooking the Chicago skyline. 14 years of marriage gone. But I wasn't the one who'd lost everything. A week later, Claire reached out through her lawyer, offering a settlement. She'd return the car and jewelry, pay back $10,000, and waive any claim to the condo or my assets. In exchange, I'd drop the civil suit and not press charges for the theft. I agreed, but with one condition. She had to admit, in writing, that she'd stolen the money and destroyed my belongings. Her confession came 2 days later, a notarized letter that Sarah filed with the court. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. Brandon's trial in Ohio moved quickly. He took a plea deal, 8 years for fraud and theft, plus restitution to his previous victims. Claire wasn't charged, but the confession killed her reputation. Her yoga clients dropped her, and she moved back to her parents' house in Milwaukee, starting over with nothing. I heard she was working at a retail store, a far cry from the glamorous life she'd planned with Brandon. I didn't feel sorry for her. She'd made her choices. I sold the condo 6 months later. Too many memories, too much betrayal in those walls. I used the money to buy a small house in Oak Park, a quiet suburb with tree-lined streets and a fresh start. I started my own sales consulting business using the skills I'd honed over 20 years. It took off quickly, landing clients in Chicago, Seattle, even New York. My separate account, The $80,000 I'd protected became the seed money for the venture. I was thriving, not just surviving. One evening, I got a package from Claire's mother. Inside was a letter apologizing for her daughter's actions and a small box. My dad's watch. Claire had lied about selling it, probably hoping to keep it out of spite. I held the watch, feeling its weight, remembering my dad giving it to me on my wedding day. I'd lost the albums, but this was enough. I put the watch on my wrist and poured a glass of bourbon, sitting on my new porch as the sun set. I thought about Claire sometimes, but not with anger. She'd tried to take everything from me, but I'd come out stronger. Brandon was behind bars, his scams exposed. Claire was back where she started, her dreams shattered by her own greed. I didn't need to destroy them. They'd done that themselves. My phone buzzed with a new client inquiry, and I smiled. I'd rebuilt my life piece by piece on my terms. Some lessons are expensive, but they're worth the price. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to protect what mattered, to never let betrayal define me. Claire thought she'd left me with nothing. But as I watched the Chicago skyline fade into dusk, I knew I had everything I needed. A new home, a new business, a new chapter. And the best part? It was all mine, free of her shadow, built on the truth she couldn't erase.